Tonight, our journey won't lead us through battlefields or moonlit castles. There are no swords, no banners, no kings. Tonight, we step into something quieter. Something that hums beneath history, not in the clash of empires, but in the careful counting of coins. Imagine this. You're walking through the narrow streets of late 18th century Frankfurt. The air is damp, the stones glisten with rain, and from behind shuttered windows comes the faint glow of candles. A clock strikes 10. In this shadowed city, a man sits by lamplight, surrounded by coins. His name is Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He is not yet the name that will echo through centuries. For now, he is just a quiet scholar with ink on his hands, living behind the gates of the Judengasse Frankfurts. Jewish Kordash. By day, this street is alive with voices, but by night, it's another world, and from one dimly lit home, you hear the soft clink of metal. Mayer bends over his desk, his fingers steady. He doesn't see wealth in these coins yet. He sees knowledge. To him, money is a language, a way to read the world. In these days, the Jewish people of Frankfurt lived under heavy restrictions. They couldn't own land, join city guilds, or walk outside the gate after curfew. So, they turned inward too. Thought, trade, and faith. What they couldn't build in stone, they built in knowledge. And this is where the seed of the modern banker was born. Mayer begins his career studying old and rare coins. They are beautiful to him, not because they glitter, but because they carry time in their metal. Each coin is a frozen whisper of history, a king's promise, a merchant's deal. He starts selling them to the wealthy collectors of Europe, princes and nobles. Through these coins, he begins to weave a network, not of soldiers, but of correspondence and quiet trust. He opens his first shop under a red shield, *sum Rothschild, which in time becomes his name, Rothschild. Inside, the air smells of parchment and iron keys. Mayer works from dawn till dusk, because he understands that the real wealth isn't in what you have, but in who trusts you. It's strange how history's most powerful stories often begin in silence. While kings ruled with swords, Mayer learned to rule with promises. While borders divided nations, he built bridges of credit that reached across them. As the years pass, princes come to him, not just for coins, but for loans, for advice. He learns that money can move faster than armies, that a loan can change the fate of a throne. Outside, revolutions stir and empires rise and fall. But inside the ghetto walls, the rhythm of Mayer's work never changes. Coin by coin, page by page, trust by trust. He teaches his children discipline, humility, and unity, telling them, trust each other more than gold, and one day you will be safer than kings. Soon, his sons will scatter across Europe to London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, carrying with them a new kind of power discreet. Invisible. Unstoppable. The world will call them bankers, but they will see themselves as something older. Merchants of peace. And it all begins here, in this quiet room, with one man and a dream too big for his time. The air smells of rain and iron. Cobblestones gleam under the few lanterns that have survived the night. Behind a wooden gate, marked Judengasse, the Jews' lane life stirs quietly. The houses here are narrow, pressed so close their upper stories lean toward each other, like old friends sharing secrets. Every window glows with its own tiny world. A tailor bent over his thread, a scholar reading by candlelight, a mother humming softly to a restless child. The grand sounds of Frankfurt fade. The laughter of nobles and the clatter of horses are replaced by something humbler. The clink of copper coins, the shuffle of parchment, the faint rhythm of prayers whispered through the night. This isn't the city of grand palaces. This is the hidden one, the quarter behind the wall. A place of faith, endurance, and quiet ambition. In one of these narrow houses, a young man leans over a table lit by a single candle. His name is Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He is not yet a legend, not yet the keeper of Europe's gold. He is just a money changer, a quiet dreamer with ink-stained fingers and eyes that see beyond the metal in his hands. The candlelight flickers against a wall lined with small wooden drawers. Inside are coins, Roman denarii, Prussian thalers, ducats, stamped with faces of kings long dead. Each one tells a story, a ghost of a decision, a loss, a bargain. Mayer studies them the way others study scripture. He tilts a coin, watching the glint reveal tiny marking states, sigils, the edges of a forgotten empire. To him, coins are not just metal, they are messages, little letters written across centuries. He sees how empires rise and vanish, how the crowns and eagles on the coins fade with time, but the metal endures. He writes carefully, his handwriting small and perfect. In this, too, is a kind of faith, the belief that order can hold back chaos. From his window, he can hear the drip of water from the rooftops and the soft creak of the gate being locked for the night. In Frankfurt, after sunset, the walls of the Judengasse are closed. No one leaves, no one enters, but Mayer doesn't resent it. He knows the world beyond the wall is not yet ready for him, so he works here, in the stillness, letting patience shape his destiny. As a boy, he learned early that freedom was a delicate thing, something you could glimpse through the cracks in a gate, but never quite touch. He'd press his hands against the iron bars and watch carriages roll past, carrying nobles wrapped in velvet. He didn't envy them. He studied them. He learned that power did not always wear a crown sometimes. It wore a smile. He apprenticed with a merchant family, learning the subtle language of commerce. He learned that a bargain must never be rushed, that silence could be as persuasive as speech. And most importantly, he learned that money wasn't truly about gold. It was about trust. Gold can be lost or stolen, but trust, once built, could outlast generations. His shop was small, but nobles began to notice. They came quietly first for rare coins, then for small loans, then for advice. And Mayer always listened. He studied not just what they said, but what they left unsaid. He noted who hesitated, who boasted, and who repaid their debts on time. His real business wasn't coins. It was character. In time, word of his reliability reached a German prince, the Landgrave of Hesse. Mayer sent him rare finds, accompanied by letters so precise and polite they seemed written by candlelight. These letters opened doors that no passports could. Through ink and patience, he entered circles his feet could not. He could not dine with his clients or own land outside the ghetto, but he didn't curse the barriers. He simply bowed, waited, and remembered. He knew that dignity doesn't come from permission. It comes from patience. He married Guttel Schnapper, a woman as steady as his ledgers. Their children grew up among coins and prayers, hearing their father explain why every number mattered. He taught them that wealth was not meant for hoarding, but for moving, for connecting. The truest power wasn't in possessing gold, but in knowing where it will go next. Years passed, and still, he never left the Judengasse. He didn't need to. His reputation walked beyond its walls for him. Princes and merchants trusted him because he never, not once, broke his word. In an age of ambition and empire that was rarer than any coin, it's easy, centuries later, to see only the fortune and the palaces. But the true story begins here, with one man in one small room, counting coins by candlelight. It begins with restraint, with discipline, with the quiet conviction that wealth built slowly is the only kind that lasts. The ghetto may have been a prison of stone, but for Mayer, it became a workshop of patience. Here, where others saw confinement, he found focus. He learned that greatness often blooms in silence, and that endurance is the truest form of courage. He could not have known what his children would one day build, how their names would cross borders faster than any army. But perhaps he sensed it. He believed that one day walls would fall, and faith would turn into freedom. Until then, he worked, he waited, and he built quietly, like roots growing beneath the soil. He taught his sons that real power doesn't shout, it whispers and waits. And from that whisper, 5 voices would soon rise, scattered across Europe, bound by one father's dream. The night in Frankfurt has deepened, the last of the city's sounds fading into a soft, bilbit silence. We return to the small office where a dream is taking root, a room lit by a single candle flame. Mayer Amschel Rothschild sits at his heavy oak desk, the same desk where a financial empire was born. The air is still, thick with the scent of old paper, beeswax, and quiet ambition. His hand, steady and practiced, moves across a sheet of parchment. The only sounds are the gentle scratch of the quill nib against the fibers of the paper, the soft hiss of the candle's flame, and the slow rhythmic tic-tac of a grandfather clock in the hollow heartbeat for the house. He's not just writing, he is weaving the future. Before him lie 5 letters, each sealed with a drop of dark red wax, each bearing a name and a destination. These are not merely missives of a father to his sons. They are blueprints for a new world, commissions for a dynasty. Each letter is a seed, destined for the fertile ground of Europe's great capitals. One for Amschel, who would remain here in Frankfurt, the anchor of their shared world. One for Salomon, bound for the imperial grandeur of Vienna. One for Nathan, destined for the bustling, fog-shrouded docks of London. One for Carlo, who would travel south to the sun-drenched coast of Naples. And the last for James the youngest, who would find his home amidst the artistic and political heart of Paris. Mayer often spoke of his sons as the 5 arrows, drawn from the same quiver, aimed by the same hand. It was a powerful, ancient symbol. A single arrow is easily broken, but 5 bound together are unbreakable. This was the core of his vision. He wasn't just sending his sons away. He was stretching the fabric of his family across the continent, creating a living network woven not from roads or canals, but from unwavering trust and shared blood. The ink lines on his maps were more than just trade routes. They were lifelines, connecting 5 distinct points into a single, cohesive whole. He taught them a simple, profound truth, one that would become their guiding star. "Remember, my sons," he would say, his voice a low, thoughtful murmur. "Money can vanish, borders can shift, but loyalty compounds interest for generations." And so, the arrows flew. From Frankfurt, a web began to spread, a network of shadows and light. In an age when news traveled at the speed of a horse or a sailing ship, the Rothschilds built something faster, something more reliable. They established their own system of couriers, trusted riders who galloped through the night, their saddlebags filled with coded letters and sensitive intelligence. Messages were tucked inside shipments of cotton or wine, their true value hidden from all but the intended recipient. This was not a network built for drama or intrigue, but for stability. It was a quiet revolution of information. While governments and armies fumbled with slow, unreliable dispatches, the brothers knew the outcomes of battles, the shifts in markets, and the whispers in royal court stays, sometimes weeks before anyone else. They were not just bankers. They were conduits of certainty in an uncertain world, messengers of stability in an age of constant war. Of all the arrows, the one that flew to London, Nathan, possessed the sharpest point and the boldest trajectory. He was a storm of intellect hidden behind a gentleman's calm demeanor. Arriving in England, he quickly understood that the Napoleonic Wars, which plunged Europe into chaos, were also an opportunity, but not an opportunity for simple profiteering. Nathan saw the deeper currents. He financed Wellington's armies fighting Napoleon, but his ultimate goal was not victory for one side over the other. It was the restoration of order, the return of peace. For it is in times of peace that commerce truly Yet, for all his business acumen, the distance weighed on him. Letters exchanged between the brothers were filled not only with market data and political insights, but with the quiet ache of homesickness, the shared memory of their father's study, and the enduring belief in his dream. This was the true secret to their strength. Every loan, every investment, every decision was made through the lens of family unity. They operated as one mind in 5 but before making a significant move, a flurry of letters would cross the continent. Salomon in Vienna would not act without consulting James in Paris, and Karl in Naples would always defer to the collective wisdom. There were 5 separate branches, but they drew sustenance from the same root. Their family emblem, the 5 arrows clasped in a fist, was not a mere decoration. It was a daily reminder of their foundational principle, strength through unity. From 5 arrows, they built a shield no empire could pierce, forged, not from gold or steel, but from the far more resilient materials of faith, patience, and brotherhood. And in the heart of London, one arrow began to shine brighter than all the rest, turning information itself into an empire of its own. It's London. The year is somewhere between memory and myth. The early 1800s. Outside, the city hums beneath a curtain of drizzle, its cobblestones glistening like old silver. Carriages rolled past in the fog, their wheels whispering through puddles. And down a narrow street, a faint, steady light glows from a counting-house window. You step closer. Inside, the room smells of ink and candle wax. Stacks of parchment line the desk, and in the quiet, a man sits. Nathan Rothschild. He doesn't wear the expression of a conqueror. His hands are calm, moving from one ledger to the next. The fire pops softly. The clock ticks unhurried, and in that small rhythm, you can feel something monumental stirring. He doesn't command soldiers. He commands information. In another age, this city would belong to kings, but in this moment, the thrones are oak desks, and the crowns are made of ink. Nathan sits beneath one candle, its light trembling over maps of Europe. Frankfurt, Vienna, Paris. Each marked not with borders, but with the names of his brothers. 5 men, 5 voices. One family symphony played on horseback across the continent. You can almost hear it. The thud of hooves on wet soil, the rustle of wax-sealed notes hidden in coats. The couriers move faster than empires, carrying whispers that could make nations rise or tremble. While others watched for armies, Nathan watched for patterns. A fall in grain prices here, a rumor that a king is ill there. The pulse of the world beat quietly under his fingertips. To most, money is a pouch of coins, a vote, a promise. But to the Rothschilds, it was something else entirely. It was unseen, but everywhere. It moved when you breathed trust into it, and vanished when trust was broken. Nathan understood this better than anyone. He often said the rarest currency was not gold, but reliability. His world was built on handshakes, and the understanding that what passed between men in silence was more binding than any law. His brothers sent coded letters, invisible threads of news that tied Europe together. By the time most kings knew what had happened, Nathan already knew what would. Historians would later say, they built their empire not on land, but on time itself, always arriving a moment before history. There's a story half legend, half truth that begins on a stormy June day in 1815. Waterloo, while cannon smoke filled the air. London waited. London waited, breathless. Would Napoleon rise again? Then, before the government knew, a man in a soaked coat entered Nathan's office and handed him a folded letter. Nathan read it once. Then, he walked to the exchange and began to sell calmly, deliberately. Others panicked. If Rothschild was selling, surely Britain had lost. The market collapsed. Then, slowly, when the panic had ripened, he began to buy. By nightfall, the official news arrived. Britain had won. The empire stood. And Nathan, who had never drawn a sword, had conquered the market with silence. That's the legend. The truth is simpler, and even more remarkable. Nathan didn't win through deception. He won through preparation, through a network so efficient, so quietly human. That information became his weapon not against people, but against uncertainty itself. The rain hasn't stopped. Nathan stands by his window, watching the carriages fade into the mist. He can almost see the threads connecting him to his brothers. 1,000 miles apart, yet always close. They write every week, sharing secrets of markets and ministries. Each letter begins the same. My dear brother. He remembers his father's lesson, whispered over ledgers in a candlelit shop. Trust, my son, is what turns metal into meaning. And now, here he stands, in a city of fog and fortune, holding the world in the palm of his ink-stained hand. At night, when the ledgers are closed, the silence returns. He thinks of those who call him the richest man in Europe. But what is richness? He wonders, if it cannot bring you peace. Power, he has learned, is a kind of solitude. He taught his sons that power doesn't shout, it whispers and waits. That patience is the truest strength, and time, the greatest ally. He never built monuments. He built networks, relationships, trust in visible things, yet more enduring than stone. History often remembers the loud ones, but the Rothschilds taught a quieter truth, that the world often turns not by the hand that strikes, but by the mind that waits. They built an empire of trust, woven from silence and time. And you realize this story isn't about gold at all. It's about the patience to see what others overlook, the courage to wait, to listen, to move when the world is still. Welcome, bike traveler of time. Tonight, we leave the smoke of early London behind and step gently into another AJ world reborn in steel and glass. It's the late 19th century. Europe glows with invention. Railways hum across the continent like veins of light, and telegraph wires sing softly in the wind, carrying voices faster than any horse. Steamships cut through gray harbors, and in the distance, the age of machines begins to breathe. Somewhere behind it all, not in palaces or on battlefields, but in quiet rooms filled with ink and patience. The Rothschilds are still at work. If you followed the gold that built the world, you'd always find the same 5 names, whispered behind velvet curtains, signed at the bottom of a nation's debt, and etched quietly beneath the progress of civilization itself. Their empire no longer needed an introduction. It existed not as a conquest, but as a current invisible, unstoppable, flowing beneath the marble floors of history. The century turned slowly. Empires were woven together by telegraph wires and trust. Everywhere you looked, the old world was learning to move like the new, faster, louder, brighter. Through the glass of the great train stations, you could see the reflection of their work. Iron rails stretching into the fog, bridges of steel, vast and glittering. Factories pulsing with the rhythm of a modern heart. They were called the bankers of kings, but that title never quite fit, because they didn't just fund they built the arteries that connected nations. In France, their capital flowed into railways. In Austria, they financed the lines that carried coal to the empire's borders. In England, they backed the construction of canals, the foundations of factories, the very skeleton of the industrial age. And yet, they never stood on balconies, shouting their triumph. Their empire was one of silence and structure. Like the stone beneath a cathedral, it was hidden but essential. Imagine a long, gleaming table in a Paris salon. On it lie letters from across Europe, each sealed in wax, each carrying news of progress. A railway approved in Vienna, a loan secured for the Suez Canal. A coal line running through the Carpathians, 100 projects, 1,000 signatures sent. Behind each one, a pulse of trust. Their network had become a living organism. From Frankfurt to London, it breathed in correspondence and exhaled progress. Beneath all the finance, their power was still a family affair, a house built not just on wealth, but on faith in each other. But behind the ledgers were hearts that remembered where it all began. A narrow street in Frankfurt, a shop filled with coins and candle smoke. The older they grew, the more the family turned their fortune outward. Hospitals rose in their name. Libraries opened their doors. Schools welcomed children who would never know the meaning of debt. They became patrons of science, music, and art. They understood the value of kindness. Their giving, like their power, was quiet. A donation made anonymously, a debt forgiven silently. They had learned that true influence was never loud. But as their fortunes peaked, so did the shadows. Power attracts light and envy. By the late 19th century, the Rothschilds had become myth. Their name was spoken not with gratitude, but with suspicion. Pamphlets and rumors spread like ink through water. People whispered that no family could hold such influence without some darker design. Old prejudices stirred, weaving their name into cruel conspiracies. Their silence, which once protected them, had turned into the echo that haunted them. The years passed, the candlelight dimmed. New hands took up the ledgers. The world itself had changed. Nations no longer trusted families. They trusted institutions. Banks became corporations, and the age of gentlemen financiers softened into the age of systems. Still, their influence endured in the railways that still carry travelers, in the hospitals that still open each morning, in the museums that still bear their name in tiny, golden letters. Tonight, as the rain turns to mist outside your window, let this thought settle in your mind. The Rothschilds were never kings, never conquerors. They were listeners, builders, believers in the slow power of time. Their story is not about gold, but about gravity, the quiet pool that holds the world together when everything else breaks apart. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more Whispers from History. Sleep well. For tomorrow, history will share another secret. But for now, rest in the quiet glow of what endures. Sit closer to the fire. The night is deep, and the air carries the scent of old paper and polished wood. Tonight, we do not wander through battlefields or palaces. No swords, no crowns, only silence and the quiet pulse of power that endures when all else fades. This is the story of balance, of how one family, born from candlelit streets and measured trust, came to hold the weight of nations and learned that justice, like gold, shines brightest when it is tested. The scene opens in Paris, sometime in the 1890s. A lone figure stands in a dimly lit study. Dust drifts, like memory, through the golden air. On the mahogany desk before him lie stacks of old ledgers, yellowed, frayed, the handwriting delicate and exact. Each line holds a secret, a bargain, a whisper of decisions made decades ago. He is a Rothschild, though which one no longer matters. They are not individuals now. They are an inheritance of thought, a dynasty of balance and restraint. He runs his fingers over a sealed letter marked Frankfurt. 1798. Inside, his ancestor Mayer Amschel once wrote, "Trust, my son, is the coin that never loses its worth. Guard it more than gold." The man exhales softly. Outside, the city murmurs. Inside, time itself seems to hold its breath. Every fortune leaves a shadow, and every decision, even the smallest one, echoes longer than we ever intend. Long before parliaments and stock exchanges, there were laws unspoken, the laws of trust. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the Rothschilds lived between worlds. They were not rulers, yet rulers depended on them. Not warriors, yet armies marched with their loans in hand. Their signatures moved borders. Their letters, faster than any soldier, shaped the fate of empires. In London, Vienna, Naples, Paris, and Frankfurt, 5 brothers moved as one body. They built a network of letters, codes, and couriers so intricate it resembled a nervous system. Before telegraphs, they created their own invisible web of trust. They lent not only to monarchs, but to revolutions. And yet, amid such power, they never claimed thrones. They ruled from the desk, a candle, a ledger, a quiet nod. What made their power enduring was not the weight of their gold, but the weight of their word. When a Rothschild promised repayment, the world believed it more than it believed any crown. Governments rose and fell, but the family's honor did not. Yet even the purest gold grows heavy when carried too long. Imagine a Rothschild walking alone through London's fog, his cane tapping softly against the wet stones. The city breathes around him, whispers following. "There he goes," someone murmurs. "The banker of kings." He walks on, head bowed, not from pride, but wariness. Because wealth, though it builds walls of comfort, cannot shield one from the ache of distance. The higher they climbed, the lonelier the view became. Letters between brothers became their solace, always beginning with warmth, always ending with duty. "We must continue," one wrote. "Not because we wish to be great, but because to stop would be to fall." They learned that wealth is not freedom. It is discipline, the art of holding power so gently it never bruises the world around it. But no light shines forever without casting a shadow. As the 19th century deepened, so too did the envy that follows influence. The Rothschilds, once symbols of discretion, became symbols of suspicion. Whispers grew. How could one family hold so much and remain unseen? In time, truth blurred into story. Story hardened into myth, and myth decayed into conspiracy. Anti-Semitic voices twisted their success into superstition, turning brilliance into manipulation, charity into control. And yet, in the quiet halls of their homes, they continued their work. Hospitals funded, libraries built, orphans cared for, while the world accused, they gave. Because they understood that justice is not earned by defense, but by endurance. The myths of the Rothschilds tell us less about them and more about us, about our fear of what we cannot see. Now, let the night grow still again. The Rothschild heir from our opening scene closes his ancestors' ledger. He gazes at a small portrait of Mayer Amschel, the patriarch who began with a handful of coins and a promise. He remembers his grandfather's words. Justice is not the sword, nor the scale. It is the space between them. That space, the stillness between action and reaction, was where the Rothschilds lived. Neither conquerors nor saints, but stewards of equilibrium. Their story is not about winning or losing. It's about lasting, because endurance, not conquest, is the purest expression of power. And so the candle burns low. Beneath the rush of centuries, the same lesson endures. That gold may glitter, but only trust gleams eternal. In their silence, there is a lesson for every restless soul. That justice is not found in verdicts or vengeance, but in the quiet act of keeping one's word. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If these whispers from the past resonated with you, consider subscribing and joining our community. And so, traveler of time, our lantern dims once more. The gold dust of centuries settles. The ledgers close, and in the silence between stories, we breathe slow and steady together. The night grows gentle again. The candle trembles. The last chapter unfolds like smoke, fading into memory. If you listen closely, you'll hear what this story has always tried to say. The Rothschilds did not simply amass wealth. They built bridges of trust across a fragile world. They learned that silence could be stronger than armies, that patience could outlast revolutions, and that the truest kind of empire is made not of marble or monuments, but of promises kept. They remind us that real fortune is not the gold you count, it's the consistency you live by. That discipline, unity, and time can turn even the smallest idea into a legacy the world never forgets. Behind the glittering walls of their counting houses, behind the tall doors of their London banks, there were simply people writing, waiting, worrying. Behind every vault, there was a father writing to a son. Behind every fortune, a family trying to stay together. Some letters crossed mountains and borders, handwritten lines of love and duty, folded carefully beside the ledgers of history. And so, what began as a story of finance was never just about money. It was a story of faith in one another, in order, in time itself. They didn't just invest in nations, they invested in trust. Now, more than 2 centuries later, their name floats somewhere between myth and memory. For some, they are symbols of brilliance. For others, whispers of mystery. But what endured was not their fortune, nor their fame, but their patience. Their ability to move the world without shouting, to hold power without showing it. Perhaps their greatest investment was time itself and how quietly they spent it. The echoes remain. In banks, in libraries, in the letters they left behind. Proof that the most lasting empires are built not on wealth, but on understanding. And maybe that's the heart of it all. That Ihach of US, in our own small way, is building a fortune too not of gold, but of dreams, of patience, of kindness, of people we choose to trust. Maybe wealth is not measured in coins, but in the peace we keep. So as you rest tonight, let this story remind you that even the quietest life can ripple through centuries if lived with care. The world changes. Currencies fade, but the value of integrity, of keeping your word, remains untouched by time. If tonight's quiet tale of fortune and family has kept you company, stay for the next. For every century has its dreamers, and every dream begins in silence. Subscribe not for noise, but for calm, for the soft, steady hum of history that helps you drift into wonder. And if you wish, leave a thought in the comments below. Tell me which part of this journey touched you most. The rise, the power, or the quiet price of greatness, because even in reflection, we are part of the same story. And now, traveler, let us close this chapter. May your thoughts grow still and your heart slow. Good night. Sleep well until our next quiet journey together.